Well, in Easter season, Easter passes. We have some of you are here for Easter service. The music's amazing. Thank you to the musicians and the musical gifts they bring. And, we have these great crowds, and it's exciting, it's joyful, and people are in their Easter best and their baskets and bunnies. And then what do you do then in the other weeks of the Easter season? The problem is that the week after Easter, things aren't all that different than the weeks before Easter, not as we go out these doors. The life-altering reality of the resurrection that's been proclaimed, and Monday you're slammed at work and still shaken by headlines and still waking up in the middle of the night with things that you forgot or are worried about. More anxieties perhaps than alleluias. And at least some of us wonder, how then do we continue to be an Easter people beyond Easter Sunday? In the different Gospels, there aren't many stories. Last week, as we had Easter Sunday, we talked about Mark's Gospel and had that cliffhanger ending, the women running off, afraid and in wonder and awe, and that's where the original Gospel ends. And there are no Easter stories beyond that. And if you read Matthew or Luke, there's some things that Jesus appears to people that day and then has ascended to heaven. And later on at night, as those guys are walking on the road to Emmaus, John is the only gospel we have that kind of lingers into days and then weeks after Jesus has died and risen and continued to tell these Easter stories. We meet the disciples and they are hiding. And then we hear that Thomas is not there. Of all the days to, take a day off of being a disciple, Easter's pretty big, right? They're seeing Jesus alive again, he's not there. And here's the thing that bothers me a lot. Thomas gets a bad rap. How do we normally speak about Thomas? Doubting Thomas. Now, is doubting usually seen as a good adjective to describe somebody? He's a doubter, doubt it. He's just like a rung above Judas on the disciple, that guy's a traitor, this guy's a doubter, and he's always kind of painted in this negative light, which is really irresponsible, in my opinion, biblically, for three reasons. One, first of all, doubts and questions sharpen your faith. They challenge us to grow. If we never ask any questions, we never get clarity about anything. Thomas appears 3 times in this gospel beyond this text, one of which Jesus is talking about his death. He's going to go, in my Father's house are many rooms. If this were not so, I wouldn't tell you. And the disciples are all confused. What are you talking about? And Thomas is one of the only ones who asks a question. We don't know where you're going. Can you, explain this a little more to us? He's not afraid, like most men, to ask for directions. But the other place that Thomas is seen is really powerful. Jesus has just left Judea. A messenger comes and tells him in John chapter 11 that his good friend Lazarus is dying. His sisters have asked, can you come be with us at this time when our family is struggling? And Jesus delays for a little bit, and then he tells his disciples, we got to go back to Judea. And the disciples say, what? They ran us out of it. They tried to stone us to death. We're lucky to be alive. We're not going back there. Except Thomas. Yeah, I'll go. Even if we have to die in the process, I'll go wherever you ask me to go, Jesus. That doesn't sound like somebody who's afraid. Maybe afraid, but courageous, brave, has convictions. I wouldn't say that's a negative light, would you? And here's the thing about today's text. It says that the disciples are locked and they're hiding because they're afraid. They're afraid that the people who have captured, arrested, tortured, and killed Jesus are also going to find them, and by association, they're going to be imprisoned. They're going to be tortured. They might be killed. There are 10 of them hiding in this room at least. We're not sure exactly. We know that the usual suspects or disciples are there, and it says, except Thomas wasn't with them. And again, as I started off, that's kind of a negative thing. He missed it. Big day, he missed it, and he says, unless I see Jesus' scars, feel his hands, touch his side, I'm not going to believe. And we say, well, geez, Thomas is saying, well, I'm not going to play in your sandbox unless I get the same things you guys got, because after all, they all had those things. But let me turn this around a little bit. I mean, it's possible that the disciples asked Thomas to go on a grocery run. 10 of them are in a locked room hiding. He is not. He's the only disciple who's not cowering in fear in this moment. Where is he? I don't know. But he's not locked away somewhere hiding from whoever might capture him. I think that says something about Thomas as well. But what I really want to focus on is what Thomas asks for. He says, unless I see the marks in his hands, put my finger in the hand in the side, I won't believe. Thomas asks to see Jesus' scars. There's an iconic scene in the great Steven Spielberg thriller Jaws. Yeah, there it is. Captain Quint, played by Robert Shaw, and Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss. What a great cast. They're comparing scars in this scene, and at this moment they are, showing where sharks either scraped against them or took a nip out of one of their legs, and they got their legs over each other at the table, and they're going through all these scars that they have. Some of us have scars. If you've had a triple or quadruple bypass back in the day, you've got a scar mark on your chest. If you've scraped a knee or had a football injury or a tennis shoulder, or you might have some scars from a surgery or from an injury. And as I mentioned, some scars aren't visible scars. They're ones we carry at the soul level. A divorce, a death, a name we were called as kid, just stuck. We hated it. I think about some of our youth group kids, and one of them at one point said, it takes everything I've got to get through a day, and I never look forward to going to school because I know what they're going to say. It takes everything I have to get through a day. High school kid knows a thing or two about scars. And in this scene, Richard Dreyfuss, they're having some levity. They're joking about it. He opens his shirt and he says, Mary Moffat, she broke my heart. And there's a little bit of giggling around the captain. And Roy Scheider, the police chief, says, what about that one there, pointing on the captain's arm? And Quint says, that is a USS Indianapolis. Fictional movie, but going into a true event about the Indianapolis that was sank after delivering the atom bomb. 600 sailors hit by or into the water from the torpedoes, and out of 1,600 of them never rescued, never survived. And Quint says, I had that one removed because he doesn't go into it, but he just goes into the tale of the pain and fear and horror of that moment of his life. We try to forget, or over time things heal, and we put those things that have scarred us, that have hurt us, those greatest places of pain in the rearview mirror. And sometimes we can't even recall them, and it's a painful association that brings something back. But scars serve as a purpose. They show us something painful that has happened to us. But I also would argue they show us the capacity for resurrection moments, the capacity for healing. That what is once hurt or broken doesn't always have to stay that way. Not all scars, they remind us of the place where life kind of hits us like being hit in the gut or having the wind knocked out of you. And I think a lot of places in life, a lot of things that happen to us in the world that are unexpected, take the spiritual wind out of us. If you've ever been at a pool or at a lake and you've been trying and you start to feel like you've lost your air or somebody's holding you under, and you have that moment when for a second you're okay because you can hold your breath, but then you realize, I can't breathe, and I've got to get to the surface or I'm going to drown here. And you're kicking and frantically getting to the surface to where you can take that breath again. I would argue the disciples are in that place when they've been spiritually hit in the gut and all their spiritual wind has come out of them. After all, they have followed Jesus for years. They have been intimately close with him. And now, not only are they dealing with his death, a very painful, graphic, public execution, but they also have these feelings of guilt and remorse. And we told him we would stand with him, we'd fight for him, we would be there no matter come heck or high water. We were not going to be moved. He was not going to have to face us alone. And then as soon as he's arrested, we're all gone, right? We left him out to dry. And they're dealing with that, and they're dealing with all the momentum and hope of feeling like this was going to be a new day for Israel, a new day for us, for our families, and this amazing magnetism of God that he had is now gone. Some of you who are old enough have an inkling of what it feels like to have a national or a movement kind of, when JFK was shot and killed. Some of you remember how that took the air out of our country collectively. Now imagine if you knew him personally. Some of them were family of Jesus. So this is deeply personal, but it's that same kind of everything is broken and painful. As Barbara Brown Taylor talks about this text, she says, it's the wounds Thomas wants to see, not his face. He wants to touch the places where Jesus was hurt, where the spear went to his side even after he's dead. What if Thomas isn't holding out proof that Jesus came back from all of that? What if Thomas is holding out proof that Jesus hasn't come back divorced from the pain of all he had been through in real life? What if he needed to see for himself, Thomas, that the risen one hasn't come back all healed up and good? We're fine. It's just a flesh wound. But who has returned to his friends with visible evidence that he'll never leave what is most human about him behind. That suffering isn't some foreign concept to him from which, as God's Son, he's divinely inoculated. There's a possibility that Thomas isn't looking for physical proof of Jesus' resurrection, as the disciples have told him, but he's looking for existential proof that the one whom God has raised up is the same one who is damaged beyond all human repair. Evidence that this Messiah knows everything there is to know about the world's worst kind of spiritual gut punches, human cruelties and suffering, and will never discount it. In fact, says, I'm in it with you no matter what. I think about moments in my life when I heard about the Sandy Hook shooting and my twin daughters were in first grade. And I tried to imagine being in the shoes of the parents who were told that their children's first grade and kindergarten classes had been shot up. I thought, what kind of world is this? When I look at images of the Canadian tar sands that can be seen from satellites, and I hear cries from the Cree people about the pollution in their rivers and the lakes, and I look at something on the screen that looks like something out of the children's book, The Lorax, but is real life of biggering and bettering, and I think, what is this that we are doing to creation? And it's a God who says, in the midst of your worst, I come to breathe new life, new possibilities, and to stand with you in the places of shadow and failure, the places where you feel spiritually adrift, and to say, that's not the end of this story. Thomas wants to see Jesus' scars. It's not a knock on his fidelity, I don't think, but a place in his faith where he is in doubt, as we have our doubts too, doubts of God's goodness, doubts when we hear the news that God might be present in all in some of the things that are happening, to ask questions and to question where things are. And in all those places, in a beautiful way in this story, Thomas says, show me your scars. I got to know that you know what it is to face the kind of world we live in. And Jesus says, here, I know exactly what it is to stand in the kind of world you stand in. For anybody who has carried those scars today, I say, hallelujah to a God who's not off on a cloud somewhere with a halo and a harp, playing some heavenly tunes, but who comes down from the mountainside to hear the pain of a people, and who says, I walk with you in it. Don't be afraid. I've got you. Very tellingly, at the end of this text, Jesus breathes spirit into his disciples who've had all their spirit. I've got spirit. Yes, I do. No, we don't. Who breathes spirit back into these men and women who have lost everything and who feel like there's no reason to hope. And who says, no, I'm still with you. You never have to face this world alone. Receive this breath and go out and know that God is still good and is risen, and that life and life abundant and love triumph always over cruelty and hatred. So, my brothers and sisters, if you've got some scars today, I want you to hear this. God carries scars too. And in the midst, God loves us in our moments when we don't feel like we can go a day ahead, and says, you are treasured, you are beloved, you are one of a kind, and the kind of love I have for you will never let go. It's relentless, selfless, wanton abandonment of anything that's rational, of a God who loves us completely and fully and says, blessed child, rise, there is more to do. Come out from your graves, for Easter lives in each of you, now and always. Amen.